How you doing? I hope everybody is doing good. I hope everybody is being safe during this time. This is not my first time doing this, but I don't know, maybe a little bit, maybe kinda, sorta. I say that because I do a podcast, but I usually have like a co-host, so it's a little different. But to get started, my name is Andre Brown. I have a lot of titles. My favorite title is father and life partner to a beautiful black woman. I have two daughters, Messiah and Jaden. Messiah is my 4-year-old, and my oldest is 15. Her name is Jaden. As far as professionally, just to give you a little bit of like my background, I'm a counselor, a life coach, and an author. I authored a book. The title of the book is called Journey of the Beta Fish. It is a true life story from a clinical perspective about why we are where we are in life as far as African Americans and what kind of put us in that place. It's the perspective from a heterosexual black male who grew up in poverty, who went on to get his master's degree in counseling and work with a lot of young people in the city of Chicago, and also travel the world to have a global perspective. So that person would be me. But all the stories in the book are real stories. So to give you a little bit about me, tell you a little bit about me, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, basically in the early 80s, where it was like it's like a very dangerous place during that time. I mean, it's dangerous now, but it was very dangerous during that time. So initially I went to a Catholic school. Then I transferred from there like in 5th grade, and I went to a public school. My elementary school was Beasley Academic Center, is one of the better schools within the city, very diverse. From there, I graduated and I went to Lindblom. It was like in one of the roughest areas. Both schools were like in the roughest areas, and like pretty like the roughest areas in the city. One was like right by Robert Taylor Homes, and the other one was like in West Englewood, so it was pretty rough. Had like a bunch of fights, you know what I'm saying, like brutal fights. And I even mention that because it definitely played a role in how I move forward in life. You know, just my perspective in the world. You know what I'm saying? So I grew up in a single parent home. My father went to prison when I was a kid. I had an older brother. He was on drugs. Mom didn't work. You know, but I played football. I had some good coaches, and I graduated and I went to SIU in Carbondale. My first semester, I pledged Q. Well, my second semester of my freshman year, I pledged Q. So I was around some older guys, you know what I'm saying? And like later on, I ended up playing football for a semester, and I ended up getting suspended for just, you know, being an immature kid. And that was my first brush with the law. It was something simple, but that was like the first time I had ever got in trouble. And for the most part, ever since then, I've been kind of like it was like a eye opening. You know, I don't know why my eyes had to be open from there, but I think that you know, once you get away with something a few times, it's like you just kind of get reckless or whatever it was, or you know, you when you're in this survival state, you have this you become like an opportunist. You know, so that's what I did. I became like an opportunist. Every time that something was available for me to do, I did it. I think that's like the mentality that you get when you coming out of poverty or something like that. So let me see. From there, I came back to school after being suspended, and I started working in my field, which I wasn't for sure what that was going to be initially, but I ended up getting into like working with homeless people. You know, I helped a woman out who I was going to the gym early in the morning, She was kind of stranded, and I walked over to help her. I had a buddy that was working at a homeless shelter, and I went and got my truck, packed all her stuff up in my truck, and took her to this homeless shelter. And later on that day, I went to check on her, and they offered me a job. So, ultimately, that's kind of what started my career. So I've done like a lot of work with like social services, and done like a lot of case management, and my education and my experience is kind of built around there. So that's kind of what I've been doing. Working in high schools, I work with a program called BAM. I worked in like residential treatment centers, and I've worked in like most recently, like when I was still in the field, I worked at the juvenile detention center. And one thing that I'll tell you from doing that is that there was a lot of us in there, a lot of African American males in there. It was pretty sad to see, because the only reason I went and I got into that was because the governor at the time, can't remember his name, he would not pass the budget. So a lot of the places that I was doing work with, they shut down. So it put me like in a situation where I went and I got involved in law enforcement, which I never had the idea that I wanted to do that, and I didn't think it was for me, but I did it anyway. And needless to say, it was one of the worst experiences that I've ever had. Seeing us in that state, the hours, just seeing people who had actually given up on life at that point already. So yeah, it was like something that where I realized that I was burned out from just working in the field. I was kind of done with it. So from there, I went. It was just kind of like in a state where I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I know I wanted to talk about my experiences. So I went and I wrote a book. I never thought I would do that, but I actually did that while I was at work. That's my baby girl, if y'all hear in the background. So that's when I wrote my book, Journey of the Beta Fish. While I was kind of contemplating what I was going to do next, I had just started. My daughter was probably like my baby girl was probably like a year old, so it was a hard decision to make to walk away from that job because it was a lot of money, and but I was extremely unhappy. My partner was unhappy. We were doing great financially, but I wasn't. I think that when you work in the field, even if you're a teacher or a counselor or police officer, anytime that you work in that field and you're doing a lot of work with the community, you can get burned out, and you can become kind of you can become kind of numb to the condition of our people, And I think that because I had like a long background in counseling, to go and transition into law enforcement, I wasn't numb to what was going on. I was hypersensitive to it, and I couldn't see us in that condition. It took a toll on me every time I went to work, and it was long hours. So in saying that, I'm gonna discourage anyone, from going in that field unless you're really built for it. I wasn't built for it. So I would discourage anybody to go into that field because I think that it affects whatever you do. It affects your spirit, in ways that you wouldn't understand. You know what I'm saying? So it's a very unhealthy environment. Right now, we're going through the pandemic, and a lot of my former coworkers, they're getting sick right now. It's like it was like long hours, an unhealthy environment, now, but even then, you couldn't get a lot of sleep because they can keep you longer than what you initially signed up for. If someone didn't come in to work or something like that, so just to, as far as social services and counseling and stuff like that is concerned, as we're sitting here, we're sitting like right in a space where I did an interview maybe like last week. It was to do some contract work. I have a master's degree. I've written books. I have tons of experience, but I placed the camera here for a reason, because one of the reasons that I wasn't hired for that position, which it was something I really didn't want to do anyway, was because of this picture that's over my right shoulder. It's a picture of Fidel Castro. So the person, because of the pandemic, we were not able to meet in person. So we did it at my house, and I chose this area of the house where where I do my podcast and stuff like that to have it. And they saw the picture in the background. I had like a great interview, but they were offended because I had Fidel Castro in the background. And what was funny to me about that was because you invest all of this time, you invest all of this money into getting these degrees, and someone can turn you away just for something like that. Without, and I found out later, like, yeah, you were great and everything like that, but they didn't appreciate the picture of Fidel Castro in the background. Well, I got that as a gift for doing a lecture at the University of Havana in Cuba regarding my book. So I came home and I hung it on my wall. I didn't have anything personal against Fidel Castro, but I said that to say this. I know that the school where you're at, they're encouraging you to go to college and things like that. And I tell you this story because college isn't for everyone. When I went, I was actually running away from Chicago because Chicago was it was very dangerous. Like in the 90s when I was graduating high school, I had to get out of here. My living conditions weren't perfect, so I used that opportunity to go to college. In doing that, I would say that I probably didn't mature as fast as I probably should have. I wasn't as focused. I went to college and I got all of these degrees and things like that. But years later, I have like tons of debt regarding that. I mean, I'm doing okay, but I have tons of debt regarding going to college and getting those degrees. And, just because you get a degree, it does not mean that you're going to get a job. So I know that a lot of people wouldn't come on and say that. I'm doing pretty well for myself. I'm a survivor. I went and I got like a lot of different skills. I do a lot of research and things like that. And, I just say unless you're going to go and get some type of professional license, which is, maybe like becoming a nurse or possibly a teacher or a doctor or an attorney or maybe like a CPA or something like that, I would, say like be very aware of why you're going to college and whether what you're studying is going to pay off for you. So with that being said, I'm going to talk about what I'm doing now. First of all, I do travel a lot. I travel a lot and do research to really get to know other cultures and to see how their culture operates and compare it to our culture. So I think like professionally, what you would call that is like a sociologist. Sociology is something that just interests me. It's something that kind of drove me to get into the field initially. And I use like social work and counseling and things like that in order to polish and develop my skills. But sociology is what the field is, but you have to be very creative in the way that you go and you utilize that degree, or because, and I say that to say this: you can know a lot of different information, but it's about the way that you monetize that information or monetize whatever you're doing. To be able to take care of yourself and have the life that you want. So what do I do now? I market my book online. That's one thing that I do. I have a podcast that I do. I haven't been doing it as much lately because I have a partner, and during the pandemic we don't meet up and do the podcast because we're doing social distancing. Another thing I do is I sell sweaters. So, this sweater like promotes fatherhood. This is me and my baby girl. This is my book right here. And then on the back, I have both of my daughters walking together, holding hands. But I can kind of do this kind of however I want to do it. Another thing I do, which is unique, this is something that I got into recently. It's kind of beat up, y'all, but you see this? Right now, the way that a big way that I make money is I do a lot of drone work. Drone work meaning I do drone work for insurance, which is I go and I fly over different properties and I take pictures of the roof. So it's called roofing. So I do that, and it's pretty, it does pretty well. I also do like mapping and surveying with my drone. The way that I got into that was I was like doing like a lot of research in different places to travel, and I came across this channel on YouTube called Vox. One of them is called Vox. One of them is called Johnny Harris. You can look it up on YouTube, and one is called Code. So I got into that, and I was watching it, and I was like, man, those are like some amazing helicopter shots. And then I found out it was a drone. So, that's how I got into that. And I absolutely love doing drone work. I got my license through the FAA. So I actually have a pilot's license to do that. So I do videography, I do photography, mostly commercial real estate, and I do roofing. And I've done like some events, like different marathons, things like that. Love it, absolutely amazing. I invested maybe 2,500, maybe 3,000 with all of the things that went on with my drone, and the license was maybe like 150 bucks. I make pretty much, I will say, more than I did when I was, at least per hour, than I did working at the juvenile detention center or that I've ever made like counseling. So, that's the key, finding something that you can monetize and not invest in a lot of money into it. I would say, right now I'm looking at buying some real estate. People are going to always need carpenters. They're going to always need electricians. They're always going to need people that fix cars. They're going to need things that are tangible, especially what's going on with the economy and stuff now. Okay. So another thing that I do is I'm really learning photography. So I'm learning photography, and this also helps me to do different work with like commercial real estate and things like that. Taking pictures of just inside people's homes. So when you go and you look on like websites like Zillow and realestate.com, I was noticing that the pictures were absolutely terrible. I never got into real estate never got into photography because I thought photography was something that it was too expensive for me to get into, But as I have gotten older, and I just kind of picked it up like within the last year, you find a way to monetize it. You have to be a researcher and look for opportunities, and that's what I've done. So I'm very kind of new to understanding the aperture, the shutter speed, different lighting and things like that, but I definitely think it's worth it. It's definitely therapeutic for me. This is actually like a beginner camera. It's called a DSLR, so I can film like videos with it, but it's like a very kind of beginner's in type of camera. But this is something that I invested, it's like a personal investment for myself, and that's my male person. And it's been therapeutic, just taking pictures and being creative. So with that being said, I hope that you enjoyed this, video. I would encourage you to check out photography. I would encourage you to look up and at least, even if you go to college, to learn different trades and things like that that will help you to be able to take care of yourself. Things that people need, things that you need a certification or a skill in order to have. I think that degrees at this point in our history is kind of overrated. I think that everything is moving more towards certifications or towards, just towards being able to do really tangible skills and not as more philosophical things. Like I wouldn't encourage someone to go and get a degree in history or get a degree in like psychology or something like that, because those are intangible things. And when you go out and you get jobs, you still have to go and beg people to hire you. Or you go and get degrees, you have to beg people to hire you. But when you have trades, you're gonna always be in the space where you're needed. So I would go and get something that's needed versus something that sounds good with a bunch of minors and a master's degree and graduate degree. That's something that you don't need. It just sounds good. But I would definitely encourage you to do something that is more necessary than not. Another piece of advice my dad always told me. He said the easiest thing in the world to be is nothing. If you don't believe me, just do nothing. And when you get older, you'll be nothing. So if you know people that's doing nothing, or if you're doing nothing right now, and just know that that's something that holds true. Right now, you're building whoever you are to become who you're gonna be later. So if you're not putting any work or anything like that, then you're gonna struggle later. If you're reading and you're doing all of the things that's necessary to move your life into the next stage of your life, then you'll be much better off, when that time comes. Something that I created where I used to talk to my students a lot, I would always say, especially for young brothers, but this can hold true for anybody, that there's 6 ways to be homeless. There's a huge homeless population in the Chicago area, and just in general. African Americans make up at least 50% of all of the homelessness within this country. And I would say to that is 6 ways that I'm aware of to become that. One of them is having a nasty attitude where people can't tell you anything. That's one. The second one is committing violent acts. The third one is using drugs or selling drugs. The fourth one is having unprotected sex, especially for boys, for young brothers. Like having kids and stuff like that at an early age is going to affect you financially. What else do I always say? Being involved in gangs. That's the 5th way. And another one was committing violent acts, I think. I think that's 6. So, and I always say it only takes one of those ways. One of those things is all you need to become homeless. All you need is one. But the more of them that you do, the better chance that you have of becoming homeless. So that's not what you want. You want to live a great life. You want to love yourself. You want to treat yourself well. So, you have to have the temperament in order to receive criticism and receive instruction in order to build your life. Because 9 times out of 10, usually people that are older than you, they know more than you. That's just how it works, right? So if you're like 15 right now, it'll be like really weird for a 9-year-old to know more than you. Well, imagine that you're 15 and you think a 30-year-old person or a 25-year-old person can't tell you nothing. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to be that way. You want to be able to receive instruction. So with that being said, I appreciate you guys. You can check me out on Facebook. Name of my Facebook business page is called The Man Code Coaching, where I post a lot of different articles, mostly historical stuff, or mostly different things that might be interesting in regards to our people. The name of my book is called Journey of the Beta Fish. The name of my podcast is called The Man Code Podcast. So that's MANCODE podcast, Man Code Podcast. And with that, I hope that you remain healthy and safe, and just be diligent. We're going to get through this, and life is going to be much better on the other end. Thank you very much, and have a great day.